Welcome to the Guide to R for Santa Clara University economics students. This is Getting Started with R. The learning objectives of this tutorial are to download and install two pieces of software, R and RStudio, create a working directory or folder on your computer to store all your R files, download some scripts and data sets into your working directory so you can get started with further work on R. Then we'll open up RStudio, which is our interface that we're going to be working with, and write and run a simple R script. Links to all these materials, including a more detailed tutorial as well as the download folders, can be found at this website. So let's get started. We're going to download two pieces of software, R and RStudio. R is the workhorse statistical package that does all the number crunching. RStudio is the interface that we're always going to be using to work with R. We download R first, and the place to download it is at the CRAN, or Comprehensive R Archive Network website. There are links to that. You can see it's cran.r-project.org. And when you go to this website, you will find that there are links for downloading R for either the Mac, Windows, or Linux. Most of you presumably are on a Mac or Windows machine. I'm on a Mac, so I would click the appropriate link there, and you'll get to a page that looks like this, and it's going to ask you to choose the download that's appropriate to your Mac operating system, and it may have something similar for the Windows page. So there are basically two possibilities for most of you. You're either on a later or earlier version of the Mac OS X. If you don't know which one you have, go up to the upper left to the little Apple sign, click on About This Mac, and here it'll tell you the version. Mine is version 10.9.5. At that point, I would download the appropriate package, the more recent one in my case, and simply follow the instructions. You may be asked to choose a mirror, which is a server website from which to download. It doesn't matter which one you pick, and then go on and download and then click to install R following all the default choices, and it should work pretty seamlessly. Now, as I said, RStudio is the software that we'll be interacting with. It's a kind of a shell that helps us interact with R in a very user-friendly manner. And if you go to the RStudio website, which is rstudio.com, you'll see that there's a link here for downloading RStudio. If I click on that, I want to go to the desktop version. And there's an open source edition that's free versus a commercial license for $995. You can get the free one, download that, and proceed as instructed. And it's as straightforward as that. Once you've got those things downloaded and installed, you'll be ready to go. And you'll be working, as I said, with RStudio directly. You never have to open R by itself. Now, the other thing that we want to do is to create a working directory or folder for all your R materials. You'll either do this using Windows Explorer if you're on a Windows machine, or the Finder on your Apple machine. So go to Finder if you're on the Apple. Decide where you want to keep all your R coursework. So you might go to Documents, and within Documents you might have a Classes folder or something of that nature. Let's suppose I wanted to open a folder, start a new folder here. I can create a new folder. I might call it Econ 42, and there you have it. Now I have on my machine a place to put all of my R materials. And it's important to have such a folder and know where it is on your computer so that you can always access the scripts, that is the command files, as well as the data sets that you'll be using. Now, let me go and do one final thing here before we actually open up RStudio, and that is download the files, and you'll have a link to the latest version of these. It might look something like this in a Dropbox folder, and it's going to be called something like files42.zip, and follow instructions. Click on that. We're going to open that, and there it goes. So it's a zip file, which means it's compressed. You need to decompress it and make sure it goes into the right place. So wherever it happened to download to, I will open that up, and here's a folder that's got all these files in it. Now I want to make sure that those files are in the right place, so I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to go to that folder in my Documents folder, Econ42, and paste them there. And now you'll notice I've downloaded, decompressed, or unzipped all these files. There are various files. Some of them say .r, some say .csv. We'll talk about that later. They're all in this Econ42 folder, so I know exactly where to find them. And that's it. So that was all very straightforward. Now let's just open up RStudio and take a look at how it works. So I go to my RStudio icon, find that, open RStudio, and it looks something like this when it opens up for the first time. The console, this part over to the left, is basically where all the R output, or most of the R output, the results show up. That's where R is running within RStudio. Up here to the right is the working space, which will show you data sets you have opened and stuff like that. It's empty right now. And down to the lower right, a variety of other things. Now to get started, just to see how RStudio, the interface, is going to work with R, let's open a new file. So I go up to the File, pull down, New File, R Script. And you can see that this script editor has opened up. And the script editor is exactly that. It's pretty much like a primitive word processor in which we can type commands and then run them. So let me create a very, very simple R script to just show you how this works. The first thing I'm going to do is write a comment. And comments in an R script always begin with the hashtag or pound symbol. Okay, so this is a comment. Anything that's a comment that starts with a hashtag will be ignored by R. R does not consider that a command. We put those comments in there just for our own sake so that we can keep notes of what our script is doing. Now let me do a few other things. I'm going to define something called A, which is equal to 5, B, which is equal to 2, and then I'll define a third object in RC, which is equal to A plus B. Okay? And that's a script. Now, so far nothing has happened. I've just entered some lines and they're just sitting there in the script. Nothing happens until we tell R to run this script. And I can do that in a few different ways, but one simple way is to highlight one or more commands and go over here to this Run button. If I hit Run, R is going to actually execute those commands, those little instructions, one after the other in the sequence that they're written. So if I hit the Run button right now, you see a couple of things have happened. First of all, down here in the lower left in the console, it has repeated the commands. And so that's what R has now done. In the upper right, we now no longer have an empty working space. We have values, and the values are A, B, and not surprisingly, C is equal to 5 plus 2, or 7. So now we've created and run a simple script. And that's all we're going to do today, but let me point out one last thing about R, which is useful to know, and that is this equal sign created an object called A to the left of the equal sign, and it was equal to whatever came to the right of the equal sign. And we're going to use this structure to create all kinds of objects, simple and complicated, in R. In many cases, R users don't use an equal sign. They use a less than with the dash or hyphen. So it looks like a little left-pointing arrow. Whenever you see that in someone's R script, it basically means create an object called A that is equal to whatever is to the right of that little arrow sign. This arrow sign and this equal sign are, for our purposes, interchangeable for the purposes of creating these objects. Okay, now if we go to close out RStudio, quit, it's of course going to prompt us to see if we want to save anything. In this case, we don't really have anything to save, so I'll say don't save, and we'll talk about saving your work or not saving your work in later tutorial sessions.